Well, hello. Thanks for tuning into this broadcast. My name is Vaughn, and today I'll be discussing Reactor's Vectory. It's a granular loop sample glitcher resequencer granular effects unit created by Tim Exile and available with the full version of Reactor as one of the uh, default groove boxes in Reactor. So this is my first ever tutorial slash demo, so please bear with me. First of all, you'll see here that I'm using Reaper. The things that I'm talking about should apply in most other DAWs. It's really about the use of Reactor. So what we'll do here first, you also may notice that my copy of Reaper looks a fair bit different than the standard default copy. I'm using a downloaded theme, which I've altered myself a bit, plus you can see that I've made quite the toolbar up there. Regardless, that doesn't matter. First thing we'll do here then is load up Reactor. Now in Reaper I already have a default template, so I'll just go ahead and use that. So now we have the Reactor track. Open up Reactor, and as you can see here, I already have groove boxes selected. I'm in the player factory library, Reactor factory library under groove boxes. I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom of here and choose Vectory. Now you can either double click it or drag it in. I kind of prefer dragging it in just so that I'm 100% positive that it took it. Sometimes double clicking, it doesn't quite recognize the double click. Now, one thing I had talked about in a Facebook post was loading your own samples, and some people apparently didn't realize that you could do that. A gentleman named, oh dear, now I can't remember his name, Brent Kallmer, has made 3 videos on Reactor, but in none of them did he appear to cover the sampler portion of it. Sadly, he hasn't made any videos in many years. I hope he's doing well, and I will also link to his channel, specifically his Vectory videos, in the description below. Oh, speaking of the description, as I said, my name is Vaughn. I make music under the name Voxonitus currently. I also have another project called Die Krankheit, which does more industrial style music. Voxonitus tends to do general electronic, techno, glitch, noise, ambient, experimental stuff. Anyhow, I will include links to my SoundCloud, my Bandcamp, and my YouTube channel, where I'm working on putting up music videos for my music. There's not much up there right now, but I am working on it. So first thing we have to do here is go into edit mode. When we're in edit mode, we go over to this panel sets icon, and we have to turn on the sample library. While I'm here, I'll also go ahead and turn on controllers, although I won't be discussing this part all that much. I also prefer to reorganize. I think I have automatic layout turned on, which can be a pain in the butt sometimes in Reactor. Anyhow, I generally like to work with it about like this. And then you can go ahead and turn off edit mode. Although it's being annoying right now and not reducing its size properly, so I'll just stay in edit mode so that I can decently resize the screen. Don't need to be too picky about that, that's fine. Now to load samples, I could simply use Reactor's media browser down there. However, today I will be using ADSR Sample Manager, which is a free sample manager and very nice. I encourage you to download it and check it out if you haven't already. Again, I'll include a description, a link to it in the description below. Again, I have a default track template here for Sample Manager. I like to move that up to the top. It's just, you know, one's general organizational methods. I also like to give my tracks different colors. And another thing I'm going to need here, and you'll find out later, is a folder for samples. Now, this is something that Reaper has. Any track can be anything. It doesn't have separate audio, MIDI bus grouping or folder tracks. They're all the same. And you'll see I'll be using this later. Again, I like to give that a different color and put it on mute because we don't want to hear the samples that I'll be recording out of Vectory. So what we'll do here, I generally have Sample Manager up on my second monitor, but obviously you wouldn't be able to see it if I had it up over there. Now this is Sample Manager. I have it at a reduced size right now so everything can fit on the one monitor here okay. I've got many libraries installed, but the first thing I want to mess with to demonstrate how Vectory is not just for drums is a vocal sample. I had worked on a little experimentation the other day in preparation for doing this video. I had picked... Oh, I don't think that was the one I picked. At any rate, I don't want to scroll through all these and try to find one all on my own. So ADSR Sample Manager has a very nice choose random sample. And to make sure that I get something decent, I generally put it on loop. I see I have a couple favorited here. Let's see what they are.
Quantum dissonance has been noted. Any last thoughts before we enter?
Those are kind of more effects, and they aren't exactly loops, are they? So we'll see what it has.
What are you doing here? You have no right to...
No, of course I have no right. No right to be here. No right to watch your face. To learn it like a poem. No right to
okay,
whisper
that one
to
will
your
work for
heart.
me. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. It's, oh wait, I kind of like this one.
God, it's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, you too.
I've always liked this sample. It's a funny sample. It's from... What pack is it here? Show in folder, filter. I'll just do show in folder here quick. It's a free sample pack. I downloaded from Resonance Sound the Vintage Movies Vocals 2 free pack. They've got several. It's a decent source for some movie vocals. Excuse me there a moment. A little bit of a cough. I'll try to do as little of that as I can. So now I've got my sample in here. I'll go ahead and close that down. And the next thing I'll do, you can see that if I hit play... Oh, well that's good. The other day I had to actually put it in MIDI. I don't know why, but I did. And you can already hear it sounds a good deal different. One very important parameter is the sample BPM down here. When you're using... Let me shut that off first. Very important parameter is the sample BPM. Now when you're using it with a drum loop, it's even more important. You really should set this to BPM of the drum loop itself, or it will just won't sound quite right. Of course, sometimes that's what you're looking for, and this is always a fun parameter to mess with. But for right now, I am going to... We'll discuss these options later. This is about this section here, the filters and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can remember right how to clear all these out. There isn't exactly a option to do that. I think that should do it about right. I'll go ahead and hit play again, just the space bar. Ah, right, it reset everything. I forgot about that. Alright. That's the bit reduction. This is pitch. These are a couple of EQ dealies. This one, I kind of forget. Pitch or something. Really, the descriptions of all these doesn't matter a whole lot. It basically just mess around with them a whole lot. I'm trying to get it to a state where it's not messing with the sample too much. Another important thing is the number of bars. That's going to adjust how fast it plays back compared to the BPM setting. Also, you need to set these over here for the loop length, as well as the loop offset. Oh wait, no, that's rotation. I like to set these all directly at 0, so it's going from the beginning to the end. Here you set the beat division. Perhaps I can only change that when it's set below 16, I think. Yeah. So you can set it to quarter note, eighth note. Regardless, I personally don't use that option a whole lot. I get the results I'm looking for just with this set to 8. Come on, go back to 8, please. Oh, there we go. It's a click and drag deal. Duh. I thought these were little arrows here. They are, but it doesn't seem to work right. So yeah, drag up and down. You can go from quarter to 16th notes. I just generally leave it set at 8. I'll do a little playback here with the adjustments, just to show what they sound like. So as you can see, it's doing it as that way. It's basically, again, just play with it until you get the sounds you like. That's really a lot of the key to Vectory, is just exploring it, playing with it, come up with what Bob Ross would call happy accidents. Anyhow, for now I'm just going to leave it at 8. Here, as you probably know, this is just a linear playback from the beginning to the end. The position on this grid shows beginning of the sample to the end of the sample. I generally like to leave one set pure linear, so it's playing from beginning to end very nicely. Generally don't use that, it's just a nice return point, so to speak. Really don't need to go into this much detail here on it. Oh, let's go ahead and play with his BPM.
Well, that's normal. Well, that's normal. No, it is. Yeah, well, that's normal. It'll be a few
You can hear how lowering the BPM raises the pitch of the sample, yes?
All the drugs and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's normal.
So you basically just find something that sounds good to your ear, right?
Well, that's normal.
Obviously, these granular filter settings are affecting it
With all
a
the
bit.
drugs and stuff. With all the drugs and stuff.
And I'll get into that more later,
With all the
obviously.
drugs and stuff.
For now, we'll just leave that alone.
With all the drugs and stuff. I guess. The drugs and stuff.
Okay, we'll stay with that for right now. I'm happy with that for now. Another thing you'll notice here is bar and offset.
Oh, God, it's good to hear your voice.
Before it was set to 4, obviously I'd forgotten to notice that, which is why it was skipping around weirdly over here in the sample
With all the
manager.
drugs and stuff. It's good to hear your voice.
Setting this back down to 0 puts it back to
God, it's good to
so-called
hear your
normal.
voice.
But I prefer having that one over here, frankly. And once you set these, you have to remember to click right.
God, it's good to hear your voice.
In this side, which are different
God, it's good to hear your
sequences,
voice.
this side is different bars and offsets. This side is different sequences. Here, these are the
God, it's
sequences.
good to hear your voice.
Everything on the left here, from the sample segment to the reversing to the amplitude to hold to stretch to slur, and pitch. This entire bit is the sequencer. And this is where you control those. And of course it has to be in playback mode for these to take effect. I always forget that. Forgive me. So as you can see, switching through these, and just even right off the bat, we turn down the Reaper a little bit here. I'll do that in Reaper rather than OBS. Oh, that didn't actually matter for OBS. Forgive me here, it's, like I said, I haven't done this much. Just so you can hear me over this. As you can hear, simply going through the already here presets comes up with some very interesting results. Just all I did was throw in an audio sample, and we're already getting some interesting results. I really haven't changed anything. And of course, there's also several banks. For some reason, Vectory likes to start in the middle. It doesn't really matter. But bank 1, slot 1 is totally normal playback, except for that, I guess. And again, Brent Kallmer has a much better general overview video. I won't be discussing the usage of this a whole lot, or these areas a little bit, but this is more about how to use other samples besides beats. And I guess I've mostly already covered that, but I will show you what I do with it and how I use it. So again, I'll go ahead and start playback. Try to pick that up a little bit here. I sure hope that's loud enough. So now I'll start messing with sample. I like to leave this one here, like I said. And I just, like to draw randomly. I don't believe these settings matter per patch there. If I go back here, that remains at 8. If I go over there, that remains at 8. If I go up there, it remains at 8. So these affect the entirety of Vectory. Okay, so you don't get very precise in where you want the parts of the sample. As you're watching the sample, you can see where the different segments... Oh, that's a select. You can see it's choosing that. If you go up there, obviously it's not going through the entire length, which is interesting. I'm going to go ahead and mess with the BPM and bars here. Trying to get it to run through more of the sample. I don't always have success with doing this. But again, it's a matter of experimentation. Every sample you stick in this thing is going to be different. So every sample will require different parameters, obviously. Well, there it's obviously going through the entirety of the sample, but it's doing it extremely fast. That chipmunk sound, not everyone wants that. That's not what I'm looking for in this case, so I'll slow it back down, even though it's not going to use the entirety of the sample. And I do a lot of this adjusting. That's why I like to leave both windows open. I wish that was the default if these things weren't hidden, because so many people don't know about them. Because you have to go into, like I said, the panel sets and turn them on. Pardon the noise there, just moving on my couch a little bit. Of course, I think that will change the adjustment as well. Ah, there we go. It's the offset that adjusts that. which again is per slot, so I can go ahead and crank that to the max so it uses a different part, right? And now I've got, why didn't it write that? 31, right. 31. Well, this is odd. Afraid I don't understand why it's not saving. Perhaps if I push stop and then hit right. No, it just keeps resetting it. That's a little frustrating, obviously. And I don't understand why it's doing that. Regardless, we'll get back into it. We're not trying to work out problems, just demonstrate how I use it. We'll go back to this. And again, just kind of like to randomly draw some stuff in here a little bit. Okay, that'll work for me for now. And remember, in these it can sometimes get confusing because they're so small. But to draw in, you click at the top. To remove, you click at the bottom. It can be a bit finicky. It's not the greatest, but it works. So again, just kind of drawing some random stuff here. Reversing samples. Adjust amplitude kind of randomly. And you notice this too. It's a little frustrating, I think, that it loops back around to the beginning. But it is what it is. You get used to it, I suppose. Now hold. Adjust the sound, giving it a more stuttery effect. Not liking that so much on this. So again, just messing with parameters. We'll try doing some stretches here. A little extreme in some spots, but you know, here and there that works. Try doing some slurs. Maybe a little bit of pitch adjustment. Okay, I think we've got something I've got something a little bit interesting here. So what I'll do now is just start messing with these. This is the morph fader. This is one that's very useful to assign to a MIDI controller, obviously. Possibly the most useful parameter to assign to MIDI. I'll discuss that quick here. This is where you assign the controllers. Down here you have the assignments themselves. My monitor's slightly far away from me, so these can be pretty hard to read. It's one frustration I have with Reactor is the tininess of so many of the fonts. I often have to have it extremely close to me. Yeah, here's the morph control. Up here you've got the sources, control A, B, C, D, and E. And again, Brent Kallmer has a much better video explaining this more in depth. And you assign the CC number in this huge list. And then down here, that's A, it's assigned to 48. Down here, you then select A, B, C, D, E, or off. Now, I don't have my MIDI controller plugged in today. I'll just be messing with the mouse. And it's something I often do. Works just fine. Having a MIDI keyboard controller plugged in is a bit more useful for a live performance, I would say. But it can be a bit tricky to set up. For instance, I use knobs, 2 knobs to control this, one for across, one for up and down. It's not ideal. This would be much better if it were a pad control, but I don't have pad controls, except perhaps on my Android. I still need to experiment with that. The most useful one, like I said, is the morph. So what I do now, I go through these, A lot of times I don't even really adjust these. I just use the presets. Because again, there's so many banks, so many options already here that Tim Exile has programmed. And what I like to do is, I like the sound of that one. What I like to do is try to find preset A and Bs that morph into each other fairly well. Okay, that's not too bad actually. So now what I do, and this is something that's exceedingly important in Reactor that has caught me off guard many times and many other people. It'll be different in other DAWs again, but it's very important to record the stereo output. I've never needed to use the latency compensated version of this. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it's for. It's not something that I generally need to use, ever have needed to use. And of course, monitor needs to be on in order to actually record anything, which is sometimes frustrating. So what I'll do now is go ahead and just hit record on this. I generally like to record at least 12 bars. Just of the raw. Well, not just of the raw. We'll just leave that as a 9-bar raw sample. That's not a performance yet. And here's where the samples folder comes in. I don't know about how other DAWs deal with this. Off the top of my head, I use Cakewalk and Ableton Live a bit, but still getting used to them. I think you can do this in Cakewalk, formerly known as Sonar, now free. Go pick it up if you haven't. It's well worth checking out. Powerful DAW. So what I do is I just drag that down, turn off record, because Reaper likes to pre-arm everything, and drag it up into sample folder. Now it's automatically muted. Don't have to worry about that. And again, now that I have that sample that's just this raw with these settings, I can hit record. There we go. That's a little bit over 12 bars. That's fine. Don't care. Again, drag that into the muted sample folder. I don't even bother titling these. I just store them. Honestly, the names that it have are based entirely in in Reaper on the title of the folder involved, or the track involved. I not uncommonly forget to name it sensibly, which can result in annoyances later. So we'll go ahead and name that now. And then, again, I just keep doing that sort of thing. Not all of these will be useful samples, but it's worth capturing them. Okay, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete this. I didn't think that I got anything interesting there. However, I do like what I just got here. Rather than hit record, I'm going to do some adjusting here. Okay, I can take that. We'll leave that at 0 for now, just for simplicity. Again, just kind of randomly drawn stuff in here. That's a big part of this, is just, I often like to just reverse small segments and then use the stretch as well. And I think this time I'll go ahead and, well, fun, it's not letting me write these while it's running. That is a little frustrating. Regardless, we'll go ahead and capture this one too. Okay, I like that. And I can see where it started about up here. Okay, I like that enough. I'm going to go ahead and save that sample again, and then I'll do one more here recording just this. Okay, that's enough of that. Now what I'm going to do here is close down Vectory for now. Drag, oops, I had too many selected there. Undo that. Just select that. Drag that down here. Turn off record on both of those. Put it in there. Now, I'm going to unmute this and mute Vectory and ADSR Sample Manager. This is going to sound like chaos at first, but because they all came from the same sample, there will be a certain level of cohesiveness. Obviously, this is for more glitchy, weird style of music. You'll see what I mean. Oh wait, I see here that I somehow managed to record 2 takes. Not sure how that happens. I'm just going to go ahead and crop to the active take. If this were a real serious project, I would go ahead and click save and all that right now, but I don't intend on keeping this unless it ends up sounding neat. So here's the chaos. Full bore. That's everything. I'm going to go ahead and loop these to the length of the longest. And then in Reaper, Control double click, selects everything, and then go ahead and hit loop, just so I can keep listening to all of this at the same time while I mess with the mutes and solos here. Okay, those two kind of go together. Interesting. What about that one plus this one? Somewhat, not quite as nicely. Again, that somewhat works. Not great. So we'll move down here. Basically a binary system. Try them all out with each other. We got 4 bits here. You can go on, off, 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 on, off, off, etc. Okay, it's starting to seem like this one isn't going to work that great. That's not bad again. At any rate, there are some interesting sample combinations there. So now that I've got these, I'm going to go ahead and reopen Reactor 6, reopen ADSR Sample Manager. Let's put this up here again. And this time I'm going to delete the vocals filter, and instead I'll go for a bass filter if I can find it. Ah, there we go. Bass loops. Let's see what we can come up with randomly. I think I'll go with that one. And again, let's drag it directly out into the Vectory sample container. I can just go ahead and mute ADSR Sample Manager. I usually run this standalone on my second monitor, but for some reason I couldn't figure out how to get OBS Studio, the streaming and recording software I use, to pick up the audio coming out of it. So it would have been just me randomly selecting things that you couldn't hear. It runs standalone or as a plugin. Regardless, we now have, oops, sorry, that was the presets setting within Blender. You can set up your own presets in Blender and save them outside of Reactor. I generally don't, because I suspect it would cause some confusion with Reactor's ensemble, what do they call, snapshots. I think everyone agrees Reactor can be a little bit confusing on saving presets within it. At any rate, not going to change anything here. Just leave everything as it was set with the vocal sample and see how this sounds. Now I don't recall, speaking of the BPM here, it says that this is a 125 BPM sample. So I'm actually going to go ahead and type 125 in here. And already this is sounding interesting. Very quiet this time though, so I guess it's turned up to max. We can deal with that in Reactor. I like that gritty sound. They don't really go together very well, and I prefer this one. So I'll find a new one over here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and record that. And again, these are all muted. This is record armed. It's the exact same thing as with the vocal sample. Hit record. So that's a little bit more coherent of a loop than the vocal samples were. Now I'm going to go ahead and create another storage folder here for these, because these are all the vocal samples. I'm actually going to head and rename this more clearly. Name this one bass samples folder. And I have an auto coloring scheme set up in Reaper. Very nice thing. Comes with SWS extensions. When I type in bass, it auto colors purple. If I type in drums, it auto colors something else, etc. And then when I drag that in there, this track auto colors depending on the parent folder. So now I've got these. And again, I can just now here, I think I'll just go ahead and record each side of this separately so that I can mix them in the DAW as opposed to a performance. Okay, that looks like it was about 8 bars almost exactly. That's fine. It's another cool thing in Reactor. If I want this exactly 8 bars, hit the Alt key on the left edge, turns into that hand, and bam, it's exactly 8 bars. Good time stretching. And again, I will move this down and then up. Oops, up. There we go. Now I will move this over here. Set this back down to 0 and record again. That's interesting. This one I'm clearly going a little further. Let's mess with the BPM. Oh dear, that's why that happened. I have it in loop mode. Okay, we'll leave that alone for now. As you can see here, I thought it had over-recorded itself. Oh dear, it had this on record. I forgot to turn that off. How annoying. Going to have to move these around a bit. I think I need to delete the active take. There we go. This has nothing in it. And go ahead and drag this down here and back up into there. And remember to, this time, disarm recording. This time, go ahead and mute that. Now we can hear all these. Scratch that out to 8. It's an interesting little delay sound because these are directly related to each other. Alright, stretch these out to fill the entire thing. Didn't mean to go quite that far. Bring it back. Zoom to selected. Now. Now let's turn some of these on. One thing that's very useful, as I said, that was pretty quiet. I'm going to go ahead and normalize this. As I recall, this is how this works. Set it to about -2. There we go. And normalize. Apply. We have much more reasonable volumes now. If I recall correctly, I can select all of these, hit F2. No, I cannot normalize them all at once. I'll go ahead and do that here quick though. Setting that to -2 did nothing. It just normalizes to peak at 0, which is fine. And this doesn't do anything to the file. This is only within Reaper. Again, your DAW, other DAWs will be different. Vectory can tend to record things pretty quietly sometimes, and it's good to have them at a more reasonable volume to work with. There we go. Now let's listen to the full-on chaos. Lots of clipping going on here. I'm going to select all 3 of these together, reduce their volume by 2 dB. Select all of these together, also reduce their volume by 2.5 dB. Clear all of the clip meters. Everything should be fine now. Apparently not. Let me keep it playing, make sure everything gets down to reasonable. Okay, there we go, that's fine. Oh, forgot that one. Okay, none of the clip meters are complaining about anything anymore. That's good. So that was utter and complete chaos, right? Let's go ahead and open Sample Manager one more time. This time unmute it so I can actually hear what we're doing. And I'm going to look for a drum loop. Now, most of the time I'll go ahead and create my own loops for this sort of thing, but just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and go with that one. I just kind of liked it. And drum loop. Obviously, turn off record. Now, the sample already had the name drum in it. And I like to keep my drums at the top. Everyone's got their own organizational structure. Now, these folders, I called them folders, but really they are both a folder and functioning as a bus at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and set them both to input 1. It's a little housekeeping. And Vectory is muted. I'm going to turn off record. I'm not going to be using that anymore. Turn that off. I could delete it if I wanted to, but instead I'll just minimize its size. Got everything up here now. Close Sample Manager and remute it. I didn't want that one that way. I wanted this one that way. Forgive me. Regardless, don't want record there either. Now, it didn't bring it in quite right. How many bars is that? 4, 2, 4. So it's 2 bars, not quite reaching that here. going to go ahead, time stretch that, solo it, and it'll sync to the clock. Perfect, right? Turn off the metronome. One of the wonderful things about Reaper is other software obviously has nice simple time stretching too, but that's just so quick and easy. Know the number of bars, stretch it to the number of bars, regardless. Back to it. Now, I'm going to just turn the bass on this time. Easier to do that by muting those. And instantly there's a degree of cohesiveness to it. Looks like I need to put a compressor on the drums. Let me just do that real quick. I'll just throw Molot on it. It's largely my go-to. Quick, simple, fun. Don't need to crunch it quite that much. Claims we're not even getting gain reduction. There we go. That'll work fine. Just don't want to clip that. Quick and simple. I suppose I could also throw Molot on these other ones too. May as well do that. Now, as I was saying, these are buses, right? I can completely collapse them. Just for clarity, so while I do this, I'm going to go ahead and drag, oops, wrong one. Drag a copy of Molot onto each of them with exactly the same settings. Now none of them will clip. Okay, so there's lots of really interesting combinations within all of that. So at this point, what I would do is I would save this as its own project and then create a new version of the project, and I would call it composition, arrangement, something like that. Keep all of these samples right here. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the other thing. Zoom this way. Keep those samples there. Come out to say, call it bar 30. Put the playhead here. And then I think I can, from here, can I set this to the start? Oh geez, so many options. I not uncommonly forget how to do certain things. Ah, right, okay, project settings, that's what I want. Project settings. Project. Set 0 to edit cursor. Now we've got time 0. And I can start dragging these samples in. So that's how I would start doing this. I always leave these samples over here and I copy them over here. Of course, I've got this set on a quarter note division, set that back to 1 bar for simplicity. So I can see how many bars there are. I like this bass loop, so I'm going to go ahead and drag that out as the very beginning of the song. And unmute these, because now it doesn't matter if they're muted. I'm starting where nothing is. But I can reduce their size a little bit for ease of seeing. Completely remove the size of those. So, start out with the bass. That was quiet. Go ahead and put all those back at 0. Go ahead, put all these back at 0, and just double click and Reaper, and that does it. Hopefully none of these clip. Oh, that's not at 0. Is that at 0? Okay. Oh, turn off loop mode. Kind of liked how this one was going. Oops, I accidentally, and then I would just keep going. One thing I forgot to do, an obvious mistake, is set a marker at bar 30, remove, insert marker, just so that I know where the song is actually starting here, and then I can easily and quickly move my edit cursor. At any rate, I think that's really about where I'm going to stop it, because once I've recorded these samples, thrown in a drum loop, then I just start doing arrangement, taking clips of these samples, throwing them in here as it's playing, extending loops, dropping stuff out. I hope that this has been a helpful tutorial. Any questions or comments on my delivery of the video, questions about Vectory, things that you found confusing or I may not have covered and forgot about, feel free to ask in the comments below. Please like the video. I'd say subscribe to my channel as so many people do, but there's not really a whole lot of interest. Do it if you want to. There's cat stuff, there's 3D fractal stuff, just a general random. It's not like I'm monetizing my channel or anything. And also remember to check out the links to my music on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and the music videos on my YouTube channel. Again, there will be links to Brent Kallmer's Vectory videos in the description below, as well as a link to ADSR Sample Manager. Again, thank you for watching, and have a good day. Enjoy experimenting with Vectory. Just mess around and have at it. Interesting results are bound to happen.